Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to episode number 3. So not yesterday, or whenever it was that you watched it, we talked about the ethnic, cultural and spiritual roots, where I asked you to go away and think about how do you show up ethnically, how do you show up culturally, and how do you show up spiritually. And I also want you to think about the way in which you imitate maybe your parents, but also if you have children, how do they imitate you? Did you make notes? Good. Hold on to those notes because we're going to be talking about modeling as part of the process of discipline. So before I jump into the process of discipline, what I wanted to talk about today in this episode, it kind of covers 2 points. The first point is factors influencing behavior, and then we'll look at the process of discipline. So the reason why I asked you to look at your ethnic, cultural and spiritual roots, because you will find from that bottom building block, from this foundation, is how you respond to everything. And obviously over the course of your years, you may have learned other tools and resources and techniques in how to respond, but a majority of it will come from the way in which you were brought up, your ethnicity, your culture, and your spiritual roots, right? So what I want us to look at today is the factors influencing behavior. Now, with the factors influencing behavior, when we are aware of the many things that can influence a child's behavior, we are more effective in managing that behavior. Okay. Now, first we've got to rule out different factors. So I like to look at it as the internal and the external factors. Now, every parent should know their child, just like most partners should know each other. They know if their partner is upset, if they're having a very hard day, or if something is bothering. You should be able to identify that within your partner if something's bothering them. But it's funny because the work that we do to kind of filter through what our partner is going through, we are seldom likely to do that with our children. We don't necessarily navigate through a lot of questions or pose a lot of questions to better ascertain why our children or our child is behaving in that way. And one of the things I always say, if we're going to take time to, ring our friend and be like, yeah, sorry, I spoke to you earlier, you seemed a bit off, what's going on? And they'll be like, no, it's nothing. And be like, are you sure? And then we'll have this conversation back and forth until they actually tell us, right? But then sometimes when it comes to our child, we're like, what's wrong with you? Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. What? You're young, you've got no bills to pay, you've got nothing. So we're not really listening to them, okay? That's the point that I'm trying to make. So we want to apply that same principle to our children. And we have to look at it from an internal factor to an external factor. So let me give you an example. My son is easygoing. He's 16. He's easygoing. Socially, he can connect. Doesn't matter if he doesn't know anyone. His social skills are very good. Now, leading up to his exams, he became pretty isolated, a lot more agitated, and he also spent a lot of time on the computer. Now, before I attributed his behavior to the pressure of his exams, I would have to go through a process of looking at internal and external factors. Now, what we have to consider in the internal factors is personality characteristics. Is my son isolated? No. Is he usually withdrawn? Is he talkative? Yes. But he wasn't doing those things. So personality characteristics were the complete opposite to how he usually shows up. Just like a young child, toddler, we know when they're maybe feeling a little bit unwell or they're a bit tired because they become more withdrawn, more quiet, or maybe more tearful, more moany. complaining a lot more. So you should be able to tell, just based on their personality characteristics, if this is normal. Number one. Number two, you want to consider, are there any medical factors? Is there any special educational needs? Is there any disabilities? Is there any, puberty maybe, or something else? Any medical factors in place as to why your child's behavior has changed? And then if that's like, no, there's nothing that I know about medically or nothing at all, we have to think about their physical and emotional development. Everyone can identify the terrible twos. But are they going through puberty? Is there like a relationship issue at school with somebody? So we kind of, again, we look at this area, the physical and emotional development. Are they just going through a phase? Now, I don't know if anyone's seen the Harry Enfield and Chums. There's a character in there called Kevin. Now, I just remember this episode and I laugh every time I see it, because Kevin was 12 and at 12 o'clock midnight, he was going to turn 13. And as the clock struck 12, Kevin went through this metamorphosis. He was this happy-go-lucky child. If his mum called him, he'll be like, yes, mum, I'm coming, very respondent. And he was so good, so obedient, the perfect child. And as soon as it turned 12 o'clock, Kevin turned 13, and then Kevin's hair became messy. Kevin's shoulders slumped over. And when his mum called him, he was like, what? What do you want? What do you want? Sound familiar? I bet it does. I'm sure it sounds familiar. Physical and emotional development changes, internal factors. So once you've got the behavior now, something's going on with my child. Is it their personality characteristics for them to behave in this way? There's no medical issues that I need to be concerned about. Physical and emotional, possibly. Okay. And then we start to then move to the external factors. So when we move to the external factors, we're looking at situational factors. So again, when I'm thinking about my son, I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? Why is he behaving like this? Yeah, exams, increased homework, back to back. So situational, yes, there is something in place. Or is my son acting up as a consequence to behavior? When I say a consequence to behavior, let's just say that he was due to submit his homework and he didn't do that. So the consequence of that is that he gets detention for the remainder of the week. He could be acting out based on the consequence for his behavior. Okay, but in my case, he was handling his homework. So that's not it. But there could be other consequences if you're pertaining it to your child. And the other external factor that you have to think about is parent and other modeling. How do I behave? Maybe, well, if I kind of get a bit stressed sometimes when I've got a lot of high workload and I just don't want to talk to my kids and I just kind of want to be a bit withdrawn, that may have an impact on how he responds to this situational factor of having exams and increased homework. Or is it somebody else who's modeling something? Do you understand where I'm coming from? And it is a bit linear. It is a bit like, is it this? Is it that? Boom, 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 boom. Yes, I want you to do that. That's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to think about the internal and the external factors so that you're able to narrow it down. So in my case, it was the exams. Son, how are you finding it? And just let them tell you. And the reason why we do it, because it will make us a lot more effective in managing the behavior. And not just the behavior that is being presented, but the behaviors that are going to come as they continue through their stages of development. So that is the factors influencing behavior. So now, if you see your child acting in a particular way or is exhibiting a certain behavior for a period of time, I would really like you to think about it from this perspective. Think about the internal and the external factors. Narrow it down and then have a conversation. Okay? Now, the reason why we do that is because we want to form a process of discipline. And the process of discipline it's not punishment. The process of discipline is the way that we teach. Now, if you are going to use the factors influencing behavior as your point of reference to understand behavior that's being exhibited, it's likely that your children will also use this tool as a power of deduction as they get older. So you are modeling a way in which to solution build. So when we talk about the process of discipline, we are saying there is a way in which that we can teach our children. And you are the disciplinarian, for want of a better word. You are the disciple presenting a way in which to discipline so that your children become disciples of this way. And again, it's a way that you're doing something, so you are presenting a different culture in discipline. Now, the first way in which we discipline is through modeling. If you want to be able to discipline your child or yourself or whatever, you have to look at what you are currently modeling. If I say that if I ask my child not to smoke and I smoke, I'm modeling smoking. If I say to my children, don't swear, but I swear, I'm modeling swearing. So they will see that as a normality, and it's a culture in which will be embedded within their lives. So modeling is the first line in the process of discipline. That's the first way in which we discipline our children. So that's why I wanted you to think about the way in which your children imitate you, because what they are in fact doing is modeling you. So any response, any behavior characteristic that you may see within your child, and this is out of special educational needs, disabilities, etc., etc., whatever behaviors that you see coming from your child is more than likely because you modeled it to them completely unaware. Or maybe you are aware, but we have this belief that most parents do, and I did as well, that they won't imitate me. I'm the adult, they're the child. How wrong can we be? How wrong was I? I was completely wrong about that one. So guys, we're coming to the end of this episode. And today we've looked at the factors influencing behavior and also the first process in discipline, which is modeling. So I want to leave you here with this before we move on into the next episode. Now, the next thing that we're going to be talking about is how we communicate with our children, the kind of instructions that we give to our children. So hold on to your responses for the modeling, and in the next episode we're going to be using it a lot more. I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. My name is Simone Brown, parent coach, youth mentor and speaker. Take care, guys.